Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. 2022, it's over, right? Crowdfunding, I love talking about it, right? We've talked about the ones that I thought were the top crowdfunding campaigns, the games that were launched in 2022. We've talked about the highs, but we talk about with my kids every day too, highs of the day and lows of the day. So we have to talk about the lows as well. Ones that, I'm not gonna say they were bad games, ones that did not meet the expectations that went along them, whether the expectations were here or the expectations were here, or just what we thought they may be versus compared to the reality of what they actually were. So the discrepancy between the two. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And I have 10 plus a few other interesting special picks to go along with that. Which ones was I less than satisfied by and wanted to see more out of? Because that's really, what I want to see is I want to see success. Let's raise the bar. Let's talk about why they weren't. Okay, let's do this. First up, we have to be talking about this one. This is the giant purple elephant in the room, right? Let's just pull up the page. It's Galactus, Marvel Zombies. This is the special mention at the beginning. This isn't even in the top 10, but this is special in a category of its own. I'm not going to talk about the shipping. I'm going to be talking about the fact that people are buying this massive hunk of plastic and that they're throwing in eensy on the opposite end of the scale. If the miniature this big, the gameplay content is big, and buying it for that reason. Now, again, a lot of you aren't going to buy it for that reason, but it's just like the Cthulhu miniature. You don't need it. And the problem with this is if people continue to support this, they're going to see more of it. And so you can only do it with your wallet. And, I say what you will about the rest of it. I'm a pledger. I am not a pledger for Galactus. Will not, won't, can't. Too much money. Too much something sitting. I have enough of this plastic that actually gets played or wants to get played or that has a value for playing sitting unplayed. I don't need another thing that size of things. Just put it out there. There you go. Now I'm going to go over here to the other most disappointing for me, personally speaking, campaign because I expected more. And this is Spirit Island Nature Incarnate from backerkit. One, backerkit has been less than impressive so far in their debut on the crowdfunding scene. The pages have been haphazard. The pages have been lackluster. I'm not sure if that's representative of the, publishers on the campaigns themselves or if the backerkit setup, but there has been less than enough information on most of these campaign pages to make me feel enticed. Combination now that Spirit Island from Greater Than Games, one of the best games, if not the best cooperative game of all time, and you didn't give me a rulebook, you didn't give me any gameplay, your unlocks were showing me cards. There was no incentive to get it on crowdfunding except for 4 freaking foils. Freaking foils. If you can't tell, I'm very passionate. I'm very boiled over about this because it just makes me incensed just even talking about it again. Why not get it at retail? They went sort of backwards, right? Now they're releasing all the other spirits as foils at retail. That makes no sense. I don't want foils. That's such another massive, I just don't get it. And I'm one of the only people that doesn't. Now, again, if you're overseas, I understand. If you need to get it or maybe get a bundle, the bundles maybe are slightly better. But there was nothing even like Jagged Earth, which was a very, very well-run campaign, which was cheaper on the Kickstarter crowdfunding side of things. What happened? I mean, don't get me wrong. It raised $1.2 million. So, that's a lot of money. That's a success. But in my eyes and what I was expecting and what they gave us in everything, no rule book, no video, nothing. I have to equally slam the big companies that do it as well as when I slam the little ones for not having stuff like that, right? You don't even have to pay for any of this stuff nowadays. There's plenty of people, including myself out there, that do it for free. So it's not a budgeting issue when it comes to that either. So that's why it was by far and away the most disappointing campaign for me of the year. And yeah, you can go to the page still. You can see what is base, a little bit of what else you're going to be offering. We offered a little bit of extra deluxification promo pack. Here's the bundles. That's it. That's it. You can see why I'm so emphatic, emotional about this. Back to number 2. And yes, don't get me wrong. Spirit Island is in the top 5 games for me all time. All time. So my expectations were just not met. Number 2, I have to say, even though, again, smashing success, 3.3 million pounds of plastic. Oh, no, sorry. Dollars raised. Pounds raised, but you know what I mean. Elden Ring. Steam Forge games. Again, not because I think it's going to be a bad game. Not because I didn't like what the mechanics were doing, personally speaking. But I think the fact that you are giving 2,500 cards and you are giving about a quarter of Elden Ring for the price of a PlayStation 5 plus Elden Ring on PlayStation 5 of probably $500 shipped right now, that is sort of a letdown. I have to wonder, I have to propose right now, what if this would have been standees? Could the price point have been cut significantly? I know that's been beaten to death, but I'm a standee boy, true and true. And I just, think that visually they would pop, and they do pop. They don't have the presence, but they also don't have the gray that a lot of these do, because a lot of you are going to argue, well, I get them to paint them. I'm an Elden Ring fan, right? Like, where were all the Elden Ring fans? Because we saw this with Dark Souls. We saw it with Bloodborne. They came out of the woodwork. This only had 13,000. Only had 13. Now, again, that's a lot. But if I told you that the biggest video game, potentially of the last couple years, got only 13,000 backers compared to other crowdfunding projects that get that number on a routine basis a couple times a year, I think I dare say that underperformed. I have to think that compared to what the projections they potentially had were slightly underperforming. And for the price point, potentially to see that there's going to be a lot more of this coming down the line, you could be $1,000 invested into Elden Ring and not have the whole thing. Think about that for a second. And not have the whole thing. That's what's terrifying. That is a trend that I fear going forward, especially on the video game side of things. Like, we talk about DLC and day one DLC on the video game side of things. That's downloadable content for those of you that are not in the lingo. But, like, you shouldn't be putting out patches, essentially, right? Like, at the beginning. This screams to me like, okay, we did the downloadable content. We're just going to give you a quarter of the game at a time, right? Like, could you imagine buying a video game and saying, okay, guys, we're going to pay $40 for this video game, and you're going to get the first quarter of it? What? Video game people would be incensed. They would be pitchforks raising, torches ablaze on the internets. But here we are on the board game side of things, and we think it's okay. That's what's concerning to me. Now, do I expect them to have a scope of this? No. But if you're going to have something such large scope, what if there's an issue like Mythic in the future, right? What if there's an issue like Mythic just had? What if you never get more Elden Ring? What if you get half of Elden Ring instead of all of that? I mean, you're not going to be disappointed because it's still half as better than none, right? But it's not going to feel complete. If you're one of those completionists that's going in because they want all of Elden Ring and you can't get all of Elden Ring eventually, is that going to sour you on it all? Just food for thought. I think the value here is well worth it. I'm not going to argue that. I think you're getting more than $400 worth. But I don't want to have $500 tied up in a game right now. How many other games can I buy for that? Again, with all the other stuff sitting on the shelf unplayed. But that's the other question, is that, how much space is this going to take up? How many big boxes is this going to be? Because money is less an issue than space and time lately. And this overlaps with things like Kingdom Death, Aeon Trespass Odyssey, Oathsworn, Frosthaven, all the same vibe. Is this going to be better than all those games I just mentioned? Madara. All those other games have a well-proven pedigree that are very, very solid and, top-notch 8 to 9 on Board Game Geek. Will this? I don't know. There aren't very many absolutely amazing, top-notch, utterly amazing, great, fantastically freakingly good board games based on video games. Is this going to be the first one that breaks that trend? Is Monster going to be the first one? Because, I've talked about this previous videos. There aren't any. Okay, there are a couple. There are a couple like This War Is Mine and a couple others that are adjacent. But overwhelmingly, largely, not very many. So take just food for thought. Speaking of rants, raves, and issues with add-ons, we're going to go over to Sagrada here with Artisans from Floodgate Games. I think this is an absolutely fantastic game. I think this looks like one of the sleeper hits that's going to be out in 2023 when people get their hands on it. I want to pick up a retail copy of it. But when I went over to this dice drafting, window coloring, artisan style game, and I said, wow, this looks so amazing. Strengths, unlocking new powers on each level, new hidden abilities that you're going to be getting. Oh, it just looks cool and cool and cool. And then we went to the page and we saw this. We scrolled down here and we said, oh, what are our stretch goals? Stickers. Stickers? Not only just stickers here. We get to Deluxible Dice Tower for $250. And I believe we also have a pencil sharpener thrown in there somewhere as well that I missed. Right there, actually. I'm paying extra, $75 before shipping, for stickers and a pencil sharpener. Right? How much is this going to cost at retail? 40 bucks? I don't need the recharge kit. Give me a little bit of the extras. It's going to be less than $75 even before shipping. Possibly even after shipping. And so that's why it was a big disappointment for me, because I went in saying, if this was a $50 price point right now, I would probably have backed this. But this is significantly more, because I don't think all of these custom pencil sharpeners and foil legacy, star stickers, foil legacy point stickers, that's like going to a restaurant and seeing some of the fancy terms they use for like mashed potatoes. It's whipped cream, stylized, en garde, aperitif mashed potatoes, whatever. You know what I'm saying, right? Like, that's how they upcharge you. They make it look and sound fancier. It's been proven in studies that when they do that, people feel more justified in buying those products as opposed to just labeling them mashed potatoes, right? It's true. And that's what I feel like this is. You get one legacy envelope and you get a legacy sticker and a pencil sharpener. Now, again, this window pattern pack, great, absolutely fantastic, awesome. That's probably where the more the content and the money is as well. But if you eliminated a few of these other things, would it actually be, I don't need extra colored pencil sets. So again, I think it's going to be a great game, but not with that. And that price point discrepancy there of being about 50% overpriced of what I thought it should be kind of left me with a bad taste. Still on my wish list though, still wish them the best, and I think it's going to look great when it comes to retail, when I get it that way instead. Number 4, similarly, it's a price point issue on this one as well. And again, not all of these are price point issues, but it's price point for what you're getting, and this is Queen's Dilemma. 2 of these, similarly, and I might as well lump this in together right now. Queen's Dilemma, and then Jurassic World, the Isle of Nublar Legacy game, whatever that one's called too. Both of these suffered from, why should I get this? A legacy game, especially on crowdfunding. If we've learned anything, the lesson and the take home from this is legacy games do not belong on crowdfunding. Pure legacy games do not belong on crowdfunding, because the price point that these companies are having to label them as to justify the overhead margin, whatever it may be, the free loan that they're getting, just seems excessive. You were talking originally when Queen's Dilemma launched, 150 pounds, 150 euros, I think actually, for the pledge. For a freaking legacy game, campaign game that you're playing through once. Although I think it offered a recharge pack and expansion, but that's a lot of money. Like, you can go buy all 3 Pandemic legacies for that price. All 3. And probably have a lot more playtime with them than this. Also, the dynamic of the group play of needing the same group from a 3 to 5 player count is not insignificant with this compared to the other games. Now, I give them some kudos because they adapted the pledge level so you could get the basic for only 100. And sorry, it was 130 maybe, 130 and 160. So I was slightly off there. But nothing to make me go, wow, this is something I really need. Now, this expansion, again, is Kickstarter exclusive expansion? Again, that's a weird decision. I'm not against Kickstarter exclusives, but it was weird from a legacy game standpoint that you're including exclusives. Take that for what you will. Now let's hop over here to the Legacy of Isla Nublar, which again, the reason to get it for $120 was they were offering different colored miniature plastic dinosaurs, right? Those. And an art sleeve. Ridiculous. I don't care what you say about the gameplay, it's very mixed. Dice Tower hated it. They panned it down to a 3. I don't care about that. Other people have played it and said, hey, it's not nearly anywhere that. Now, mechanisms don't always make sense, I've heard, and some of it's very simplified, and some of those concerns, but not necessarily bad. But I said $120 with little to no information on what it actually was. At least with Queen's Dilemma, you could say it's like King's Dilemma, but bigger in scope and doing a couple of these things. This basically was like roll and move and a couple of these things. We can't tell you any of the other mechanics, though. It's spoiling everything. That's another reason legacy campaign games should not be on crowdfunding, because I need to know some more specifics of those things to be able to know whether or not it fits me or not. I need it. And it doesn't give you any of this stuff. This bundle makes nowhere near the difference in terms of the price point expectancy that I would be willing to do at this point. So that's why it doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I'm lumping these two together. Next up, again, is going to be a slightly different departure. Again, from a, can I actually get in? We have Steamforge again, and I'm not picking on Steamforge by any means. Their products, I think, have gotten a lot better. But when I look at Rivet Wars Reloaded, for example, when this launched, I read the description, I read the nature of it, the tacticalness of it, the how you put it together and how you're able to play it, and I said, whoa! I never had really given that a shot when CMON had that licensure. That was sort of just before my time getting into the hobby, and I said, wow, this looks like it's a really, really interesting thing. But then you went over to the crowdfunding page. And again, comparative-wise, the get-in point for a 2-army system was 130 pounds. That's massive. When you have all of the other 2-player skirmish asymmetric battles, compare it just to Mythic Battles Ragnarok or Mythic Battles Pantheon, right? For what $130 can get you, it's not apples to oranges, but it's apples to oranges, right? That was the issue. And I can't justify it when there's so many other very, 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 very quality established retail, let alone other crowdfunding games that are in the same niche for a fraction of the cost. Could I see myself getting this in the future? Possibly. But the buy-in for this as an unknown compared to the established, that was the issue. And I think that's why it only got $300,000. Why it was significantly under for something that should be performing at a higher level. Because I can even argue that Token Terror's Battlegrounds here does sort of the same thing in a fraction of the size and a fraction of the price. Now, I mean, I love the idea of cooperative, competitive, and solo with team, but how many of those can you actually play? How many of those are actually going to appealing to you? How many of those are going to fit with your playstyle? And some of those modes, when you have that many, tend to be slightly not always the same in terms of quality. So that's why it was on the list. Also, in the fact that, again, you're breaking $400 to get the gameplay all in to get all of these other expansions, which are like 70 euros or 70 pounds, I think, a piece. That's unheard of price point wise for an expansion. I hate seeing that as well. I mean, I'm not going to say that the cost isn't there, but it's going to price out a lot of people. And I think the final funding goal represented that. And so that's why it's on the list. Next up, I mean, this one was one that had all the makings of a Liege game. Highly tactical, highly adaptable, abstract with a slight theme in the lines of Azul-ish, only on steroids. And this was Amygdala from Game Brewer. But they launched it twice over on GameFound. What people wanted and what people were getting were just not on the same wavelength whatsoever. Super deluxified abstracts don't work. Abstracts are abstracts for a reason. The people that like abstracts are not the highly overlap Venn diagram sort of world with the heavy deluxification Euro style or miniature based game people. Like I feel like the exception that overlaps with some of those rather than the rule. And this is one of those few campaigns that I looked at this and I said, I have to watch a video. The rule book doesn't give me a good flow and the page does even less. And so I looked at this and I said, wow, aesthetically pleasing. And, it's got all these. And the price point was 100 euros the first time around for this all-in exclusive and 65 for the, blinged out version. So I looked at this and I said, no, it funded the second time around just barely 26,000 euros. And they reduced a lot of the deluxifications. And that's why I think it just barely scraped by of their 25,000 euro goal. Which makes me wonder, are they going to have issues? Because I think the first funding goal, the first time around the campaign, was significantly higher. Again, this is a game that I think could really be a sleeper hit. But it really didn't give a lot of what you're doing initially in the first place, especially on the first page. The second page here is a little bit better laid out and has a little bit more design of how it's going to be played. But it just didn't give that impression initially to people. And so I think it turned off a lot of people. The tiles here are the exclusive upgrades that you're getting. And that also is a very hit or miss thing in these games, right? Like bullet, heart, yes, absolutely. Other games have not done nearly as well when that's been the main exclusive. And so again, as I said previously, exclusives are not something I'm widely against, but they have to fit your audience. And I feel like with an abstract, that's not going to fit as much. And so that's why it was a little bit of a disappointment in that sense for me. Next up, we have from Mantic, the previously failed again and then succeeded Umbrella Academy, the board game, the second in the lines of the Umbrella Academy board game since the Netflix series came out. And the issue was, the first time was just completely lackluster. People had said with Hellboy that this was, a good series. They had some good prices. They had good exclusivity. It was miniature based. And then they kind of came up with this Umbrella Academy cooperative game. And it looked very IP thematically addressed. playing very heavily true to the more the comic based origins, but it was very, very light, very, very simplistic in terms of its mechanistic aspects. And people looked at it and said, I don't really see the appeal for it. And again, I didn't see the appeal either. Like, the question is not, is it a good value, but how does this stand apart or different than any of the other cooperative games that I have in my collection? And this was the answer I could not give myself in any way, shape, or form with any of these, even with all of these little exclusives and collector's edition add-ons, and it being £70. So IP-wise, okay, but mechanistically, just not present at all. So I was a little disappointed there, especially when you people talking about how good Hellboy was, a little bit in a different sense of a dungeon crawler. So a little bit lackluster there as well. Speaking of deluxifications, now I'm not going to go Castles of Burgundy here, but I can make the same argument of Castles of Burgundy, where I can pick up the Castles of Burgundy game right now for about $20 on the secondary market easily. Even maybe the 2019 version of Castles of Burgundy for about the same price, maybe slightly more depending on the day, person, place, time, whatever. But now we're going to go with Kingdom Builder. I mean, Queen Games has kind of had all over the place. A lot of people, myself included, have been very perturbed by the Stefan Feld collection. People are getting classic editions before deluxe editions. People are getting all 4 sets of the editions, whichever ones, wherever they are, before the campaign that ran over a year earlier of just getting Hamburg or Amsterdam. I still don't have Hamburg. I probably won't get it for at least another month or so. It's just all over the place in terms of news and updates, and no reliable information coming out consistently. And it's not all on Queen, but some of that's delays and logistics, but it just hasn't felt very well run. And so then you have things like the Kingdom Builder Empire edition that I look at and I go, it was like Castles of Burgundy. At least with that, they offered a little bit of new. They offered a whole bunch of deluxe that made sense in the context of things. They redid all of the art. And then you have this. And people view Kingdom Builder as one of those essential classic games where people are very divided on it. It's actually a very deep game, but a lot of people don't like it with some of the tiling that you're doing. But this is 200 plastic miniatures and 120 resin tokens. And the price point for just the upgrade kit for the base game alone was $60. The upgrade kit for it all was $150. If you want just an Empire edition, it's $240 for a game like this, which doesn't really need it. Which I would argue probably looks better without it, because that doesn't remind me of great things. That reminds me of the Simon Masters of the Universe, where it looked more like the plastic was straight out of the 80s rather than more recently updated. And that's at least one thing you can say about Castles of Burgundy and Awakened Realms, right? That was beautiful to look at. This is less so. And for a price that Elden Ring is blushing for, you have to go, why? That's the other issue. Queen Games hasn't had trouble getting funding on any of these. There are some solid Queen Game folks, and I'll say that their Queen Games are okay. I have not been wowed by any of the Queen Games, though. That's the problem. Some of the Stefan Feld games, supposedly, only some of the reviewers that got the early copies, like with Marrakesh. Side note here, like there were like a couple people that put Marrakesh on their top 10 games of the year. Well, there's only like a handful of people in the whole world that even have Marrakesh, so it'd be kind of hard to rate a game like that, and it's not available on the secondary market because Queen also hasn't told us how those are going to be available yet either. So anyway, side note there. But this is the issue, is that it's just a lot of this that we've seen from Queen, over-the-top deluxifications that haven't always made sense in the contextual of the situation. Again, if you have people that are going to buy it, I don't fault them for that side of things, but it's not a way or a trend that I like seeing overall speaking, whether it's this or Castles of Burgundy, with games that aren't, getting significant upgrades, especially with gameplay. Lack of gameplay, always I'm gonna have a little bit of disappointment with from that aspect. So that's why it's on the list. 2 more here. We're gonna go back to Simon. The War of the Ring, a revamp, a retheme, a re-edition when DUNE was announced, was sort of like this grail thing of, wow, War of the Ring is really hard to get into, and it's a 2-player game, and how are you going to adapt this? And, maybe they're going to go back to sort of the old Blood Rage model, right? Where you've got things finely tuned, where maybe just a small amount of promo that isn't going to vastly unbalance things, even though, you can argue that the Blood Rage expansion promos did. But maybe they're going to get away from that. Maybe we can see what they can entail. Maybe they're going to scale it back and really show us gameplay first. Stop laughing in the comment section. I can hear you guys through the computer. But they said $160 for this carry-all pledge, which wasn't horrible. It's offering a whole Kickstarter exclusive box, a whole nother expansion as well, with all of these things extra. And I just have a hard time going, how is all of this going to be balanced, right? War of the Ring, what people like about that is that it is uniquely, exquisitely, extremely well balanced. The problem is that, like I said, is the reason I'm never going to own a copy is because I can't get into it. I can't spend 3 hours playing a game like that. It's going to take me an hour to explain it to my wife, and you know, there's no one I can explain it for an hour or two in my game group in that way, in that shape, in that form, especially with my wife. That's just not her forte. Like it's, you know, 5 to 10 minutes or less, and boom, that's her preferred. And so I look at this and I go, that doesn't streamline any of the issues that I personally would have with the other game, and a lot of people I think would have the same issue. And so that, in combination with all of this extra stuff, I have to wonder, how well is all of this balanced? How well is all of this balanced? Because that's been the issue with a lot of the expansion, promo, exclusive stuff that CMON has done. And with a game like this, where that is the core of it, of a 2-player yo-yo yin-yang battle that needs to have that as the absolute must above everything all else, I have some worries. Well, am I saying it's not going to have it? No. I mean, no one's had hands-on, so no one can speak to that. But does it make me trepidatious? Yes. Does it make me want to go in on it? Absolutely not. You know, this is one that if it's really that good, I mean, pick it up on the secondary market. If it's really that more streamlined, it'll show very quickly. But I read through the rulebook. I did not get that impression either. Slightly more, but not enough to make it accessible for me. So that's where the disappointment was, in combination with the concerns about balance. So I have to include it for that reason. Last up on this list was one that, again, I had my heavy eyes on, and I said, why am I going to get this on crowdfunding? Show me what you got, Pandasaurus. Why are you going to crowdfunding with this in the first place? Just like Skate Summer, we have Fox Experiment, and Fox Experiment, again, looks like a very great concept. I love the idea of it. I love the theme of it. I think the combination of things looks very appealing. It reminds me very much of Sagrada Artisans. But as you just may have heard my comparison of Sagrada Artisans, I was not enamored at all on how the presentation on the crowdfunding campaign was, and the incentive to actually get it now versus waiting till retail. The price point was fine. The retail edition, there's no way that this is going to be $55 at retail. This is $55 at retail. I would be shocked. $60 for the Kickstarter edition, though. So that also makes, you know, the difference just is kind of weird. And then $100 for the all-in. And the all-in is slightly deluxifications more and a 5 to 6 player expansion. How many times have you bought a 5 to 6 player expansion and utilized it to its full extent? Nope, said hardly anyone ever. And so I can't have the justification for me personally as a getting this. And the stretch goals are, I believe, I'll scroll down here just to check it out, all non-gameplay. All non-gameplay. They are extra screen printed. I'll be completely transparent here. I do not like screen printed in the most part. I think my experience with Meeples and Monsters from AEG solidified in the fact that screen printing in this sense offers little to no benefit whatsoever, and it doesn't even add aesthetic value. You can't even tell necessarily what the shape is. I'd rather have a better shaped meeple that are slightly individually more shaped and carved out, rather than they're just in a generic yellow or blue or red chunk. Because look at the outside of these, for example, right here, right? If I took this screen printing off of this, could you even tell that that was a wolf? No, you couldn't. How many other games do I have that are meeples that are actually really, really aesthetically like the animal and give you that animal shape? Like, hell, heck, let's just talk about animal upon animal, right? And if you can't do it in this, why should I get that? That doesn't improve the aesthetic value at all. I see no reason to get any of these upgrades. None of these upgrades do anything for me, including extra dry erase marker cards. I don't need extra of that stuff. I don't need neoprene mats. Neoprene mats are nice occasionally, but after you know you love the game, not beforehand on the first place. See, some of these, you can kind of tell these are better fox shaped, right? These are fox shaped. Are those fox shaped? No, look at this for a second right here. Look at these two. Can you tell that's a fox? No. Can you tell that these are foxes? Yes. Well, okay, this one kind of looks like a badger over here, and this one kind of looks like something marsupial-esque. But anyway, that's the question. I think the gameplay looks solid. I think it looks like a solid product. I think I'm going to have it heavily on my list, wish list-wise, and to get it when it comes to retail for $40 or $35. But to get it now with a 6-player expansion I'm never going to use, and deluxifications that aren't really necessarily that aesthetically pleasing, pass. And that's why I did it, even though I really wanted to love it in the first place. And that's my own personal expectation more than anything else. They didn't do anything wrong, just didn't meet where I was thinking it was going to be. So there you go. That's it. 10-ish games. You know, I kind of threw those two together. That worked out nicely. So there you go. Boom. Which ones were you disappointed by in some way, shape, or form? Sometimes it's price, sometimes it's what it brings, sometimes just the gameplay, everything along those lines. All of those are equal and valid creative complaints, depending on your side of things. Because again, like I like working with companies, but I'm also a consumer as well. And so balancing the consumer with the publisher, you got to look at it from both sides of things. And I like to do that on this channel a lot. So if you like that, let me know, comment down below, like it, thumb it, and give me a subscription. There's more where this come from. There's more where this came from. It's been a long day. Stay classy. See you around. Thanks for watching.